Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OneDrive is partially working daily because I still haven't fixed my OneDrive issues, and despite completely uninstalling the app and resyncing and doing everything possible, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've had quite a week with OneDrive.
It's because I said something nice about it.
Yeah.
Let that be a lesson. Let that be a lesson. Speaking of lessons, don't be caught without your backup, folks. But check out Cloudberry Lab, cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free offer. Learn how to do better backups because OneDrive is crap in the bed, and I swear that is not intentional. But I don't know why it's doing what it's doing, and yet here we are. Paul, I'm assuming you're dead and covered in snow?
Yeah, I'd open this thing behind me, but of course it would just white out the screen. No, it's snowing. It is snowing. When we just talked earlier today, it was just kind of flurrying. In fact, it was so light at the time. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like, the school canceled yesterday, well in advance of the storm actually happening. But I would say right now it is legit snowing, like it's heavy, kind of wet snow. So the only question is, how much? Right now, it's not even an inch, but.
Maybe one day your daughter will interrupt your podcast, much like mine does.
Well, my daughter is, I was going to say she's old enough for that not to be an issue, but actually I've been doing podcasting for a long time. So she was a little kid, probably not as young as your daughter, but my kids always knew in my old house, and actually now in this house, if the French doors to my office were closed, you don't bother Dad. But now she's old enough that she just ignores me even when I'm not doing anything. So actually, well, it all irons out in the end.
Yeah, I think I could say it probably for my wife and my daughter. They both know that when I'm podcasting, they're not supposed to interrupt me, but that doesn't really seem to stop either one of them.
Yeah, impulse control is on a person-by-person basis.
It really is. Speaking of impulse control, because it was blurted out across the Twitterverse this morning by Mr. Joe Belfiore, he's confirming what Paul and I already knew and talked about exclusively on a Saturday afternoon, because that's what we did. That Windows 10s mode is confirmed and Windows 10s is dead.
Yeah. So is that how? I didn't even look to see how it was confirmed. I couldn't care less. I already know it's real. But was that how it was confirmed? I assumed it was like a webcast thing or something.
No, Joe Belfiore tweeted it. That's
really it did in response to a question, or just tweeted it out.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't care either. See, that's what I'm saying.
No,
we already know this is real.
Like we had the actual document
that's been
from Microsoft.
Exactly.
This was never a question in our mind.
No.
So
yeah, actually, I didn't read the original source because like I said, I don't care. There was one bit of new information, which is that he said this isn't happening until 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Now, of course, he's a Microsoft guy, so 2019 might be fiscal year 2019, right? Which begins July 1.
Yep.
My understanding, and based on the stuff we saw, is that it's happening this year. In fact, as soon as right now, on this next release, but I guess.
Yeah, so I think you might actually be on it because I saw the 2019 date as well, and I was a little confused, but I bet he's thinking on Microsoft's fiscal year calendar.
I think that's how they think, yeah. Because there's a nice bubble going on up there with those guys. You know? You kind of see it in a lot of ways, but that's one of them. Like you literally contort what a year is in your head to match your employer's fiscal year.
But that does make sense because the documentation we saw was OEM documentation, and if they're physically building that stuff in Q2, it's probably not going to hit store shelves until say Q3, Q4 potentially, depending on where it is, and so that would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Speaking of things that Microsoft is still working on, getting a lot of value out of this image back here. I've used it several times now, but it's relevant once again. Microsoft is still working on Cortana and Alexa integration. They say it's now in self-host, which is Microsoft's kind of internal dogfooding thing. Still no timeline for release. It'll show up right when it's good and ready, and I'm sure it's just top on their priority list.
So I don't know how to say this. I had there was a little the webcast yesterday with the Windows Insider guys. I have a hard time watching those things because they're so goofy and weird. Somebody told me because I literally couldn't watch it. There was a moment when Cortana Alexa integration came up, and the guy who was hosting the show laughed because he thought they were joking, and they said, "No, seriously, you guys said you were going to do this last year." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And then another person on the team had to say, "Yeah, actually, we are doing that, and it's still happening. It's just not ready yet." And like the guy, he had no idea, and he's running the thing.
Mm.
It's like I just don't even I don't even know what to say anymore. I just feel like this thing. What are the analogies we could use? The train running off the track, the ship falling over the edge of the ocean. There be dragons here.
I will tell you what you did. You did just fire off just about every single thing in my office by saying a couple key words, jerk.
Sorry about that.
That's going to be a problem because Microsoft is also limiting. It's no longer, if you have an invoke nearby, please silence it. Hey, Cortana, it's just, oh, there it goes. Cortana, they're making it simpler, but only for the invoke, not for the PC, which is odd.
I mean, they can't just change Cortana on the PC, Brad. You got to release a new version of Windows for that. I mean, you know it's going to be like they'll add it in September.
That is like so alarming. I'd never even, to be honest, I never really thought that they couldn't update Cortana like that unless they shipped. They have to be able to do it without shipping a new version of Windows.
That's a feature. It requires a new version of Windows.
If that, because I know they've added like back-end services, but
an asteroid striking the Earth. An Apple employee walking into a glass door. You go to dunk a basketball and you hit the bottom of the rim, fall down, land on your back, and then the basket falls on top of you.
I mean, because
I'm trying to think of like, I don't know.
I'm sure somebody's going to write and be like, no, they can't update it. And if they can, I'm happy. But it makes me actually very nervous that they're not like rolling out updates weekly at this point because...
I'm not saying they can't. I am sort of saying they never have, and I don't think, and I don't think they will. I don't think they can in the sense that it's an integrated part of the shell. It's Windows. You know, it's not like an app. I don't think they can.
That's rough.
I know.
Because I get Amazon updates, I think, once a quarter, I think, if not more frequently than that.
I know.
And they add new...
It's like a guy jamming a USB port the wrong way, or you walk into a door and you're pushing on it, but it's a door you're supposed to pull, but the handle could go either way and you can't really tell.
Yep.
That's Cortana.
Yeah. Well, they have a new VP, so let's see if he can...
right the ship?
I don't even think crack the whip at this point.
Unsink the Titanic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you know, put the fires out that are burning everywhere because I think there's a burning fire pit in the middle that's Cortana, and then there's Amazon and Google on the outside just throwing gasoline onto it.
Yep.
And people are gonna be like, oh, but I love my Cortana. You probably do, but the problem is that they're moving incredibly slow in a market that is moving incredibly fast. And so, you know, laws of physics will eventually tell you that you'll never be able to catch up.
It's it's an algebra problem. A train leaves the station going 600 miles an hour, and then Cortana leaves the station 1 minute later.
Here's a little lonely thought for you, Paul. Just because I love astronomy and I also love math.
Yes.
The galaxies are moving away at such a rate that if the planet still exists in a couple millions or maybe even billions of years, which at our current rate may not happen, you will look up into the sky and see nothing.
Yeah,
because all the stars were gone. The other kind of sad thing is that even if the only way we can get to another, I believe it's super cluster, I think is the correct terminology, is if we can move faster than the speed of light at this point, because you have two objects moving away very quickly.
Yep.
It's now faster than the speed of light, and we can't get there. So if we don't like our neighbors in our own little cluster here, we're kind of screwed.
So I will just, because I'm a glass half full kind of person, will point out that there are probably innumerable galaxies out in the universe that we don't even see or are aware of, and they could be moving toward us. So we're probably just going to get hit by one and die that way anyway. So we don't have to worry about the starless sky thing. We'll be fine.
We are going to get hit by, actually, I think it is Andromeda. I think we're merging. Actually, the Milky Way and Andromeda are going to kind of run into each other. But
just like Broadcom and Qualcomm, it's going to be great.
Wow.
Yep, I could do this all day.
you're you're firing them off. But actually, when the two galaxies merge, because there's so much space in between each little thing, it's actually not going to really like notice anything. But
Oh, like all the little pieces are going to go by each other in space.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
If you've ever noticed, Paul, there's a lot of space in between us and the moon. It's kind of like that, but on a larger scale.
I understand.
Yep. Speaking of smart things, because we've been on a smart topic all day, Windows and education, what wasn't said, Paul? Tell us more.
Well, for the second quarter in a row, Microsoft has pulled out this future source report to, and they cherry pick the little pieces in there that make Windows look good. And then they leave out all the important data, which actually says you're not doing that good. And, key among them are the fact that for the past 2 quarters, Windows has grown its share in the education market. And this is from a devices shipped perspective, new devices. But those 2 quarters were also the quarters in which growth was by far the smallest. It's just a seasonal thing. And for the year, Windows was outgrown by Chrome OS. Also, Chrome OS still grew in those 2 quarters too. So even though it's the dominant player, it still grew, which is kind of the trick. The other thing is this is US-only data. When you look at the world, Chrome OS is dramatically outgrowing Windows, which makes sense because Windows is dominant worldwide, and that's the thing that's going to grow. The problem is when that happened in the U.S., Google took over the U.S. education market. Now Microsoft is kind of scrapping to get back. They need to be careful not to allow that to happen worldwide. But from sort of a Microsoft perspective, I don't know if you read the report or if you looked at Microsoft's blog post.
No, I haven't yet.
Or whatever. Well, let me ruin the surprise. There was a major education event last year that we went to where Microsoft announced Windows 10s and the Surface laptop, and then some other things, obviously. But just focusing on the Windows angle. Guess which 2 phrases never occurred in Microsoft's blog post about the future source report? Windows 10s and Surface laptop. Now, the notion of a $1,000 plus laptop heading to the education market was ludicrous the second they announced it. I think they only announced it there because they didn't have any decent laptop to point to for Windows 10s. But Windows 10s is very interesting, right? And Microsoft talks a lot about low-cost education PCs. And I think a lot of people assume that those things come with Windows 10s, that somehow the PC maker will charge less if it comes with Windows 10s and schools will save more money and maybe they'll give it a shot and maybe people are rolling it out and giving it, and actually using it. And that is not happening. Microsoft has never once pointed to any educational institution of any size and said these guys have switched to Windows 10s. No one has. And those educational PCs that they talk about, they don't ship with Windows 10s. They ship with your choice of operating systems. You can get Windows 10s, you can get Windows 10 Pro. They don't talk about which the schools are choosing. Let me ruin that surprise. Oh, they're choosing Windows 10 Pro or, education or whatever. So depending on the size.
Interesting. Did this report come out today?
Yesterday, I think.
So I wonder if this is the reason why Joe actually tweeted was because somebody looked and said, hey, look, Windows 10s isn't mentioned anywhere. What's going on?
That could be. Yeah, I mean, if you just look through the Future Source article about their report and search for the term Chrome, you can find out some interesting statistics, which show that Chrome is actually doing way better than Windows from a growth standpoint overall. And, it's kind of like the report that Microsoft touted a few weeks ago about, was it like people in work, if they could have any computer, if work would just give them a computer, like they chose Windows or Surface devices over other Windows PCs. And it's like, yeah, but also they chose Mac over Windows by a dramatic amount. Like it was like 2 to 1. And so that you get into this awkward position where Microsoft is forced to promote this study that has a couple of good data points for them. So they kind of pick out the little good ones. But when you actually look at the study, what it really is saying is actually this other thing is doing better, and I hate being the person that keeps pointing this out, but there I go. So
don't be such a realist, Paul.
Yes, jerk.
Yeah,
fact-based jerk.
But I mean, that's essentially what we do. Is Microsoft is very good at pushing out marketing material, which is great. That's what they get paid to do. And then somebody actually reads it and then looks, those little asterisks, and then actually reads the full report. Then you get a different story. But
I will say this, in the vein of being fair, and I wrote this in my article too. I earlier this year had written a story that Microsoft gets an A+ or whatever for its education efforts. Microsoft, for whatever problems it may have in whatever markets, often does a really good job at pushing what they have. And I feel like they are doing everything they can do in education right now, especially in the U.S. market, right? And if you look at the collective efforts they made over the past year to turn this thing around, it's pretty impressive. From Microsoft 365 for education to the, this is not the exact right name, but the Microsoft Tools for Education, I think it's something like that. It's tens of millions of users. Minecraft, obviously, huge success story there. They're kind of firing on all cylinders. If they are to fail in education, it is not going to be because there was a lack of effort. Like, they really do a great job trying to compete. Now, I mean, obviously they sat still for a while before that, and maybe that's why we're here. But I think Chrome OS caught everyone by surprise.
Well, there you go. And to be honest, I didn't really know this was happening today until I got a bunch of emails, which will get posted up later today. Today is Microsoft's Developer Day, and they're doing a stream here. By the time this podcast is up, it'll probably be going on or possibly expired, but it starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff there, and if that's your jam, make sure to check out the sites because there'll be a bunch of information going out about that.
Just add, I don't expect most normal people to watch something like this. It is worth reading up on, however. People will write stories. This is what Microsoft discussed. And I don't remember the context for this, but I wrote something recently where I sort of pointed out that the developer stuff is where, it was the community stand-up they did recently, where they talked about multi-instance UWP apps. You can find out a lot about a platform by paying attention to the developer end of it. Like when I was writing my first Windows Phone book, I went to those guys and said, I need to see your developer documentation because I need to understand what things are called. Every little widget in the OS has a name, and that name is in the SDK, and it's, if you can kind of pay attention to this stuff, even if you're not a developer and even if you don't kind of care about it as an enthusiast, you'll learn more about that platform that you care about so much if you pay attention to the developer stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting they're doing this Developer Day relatively close to Build, but maybe they've got a lot planned for Build and they wanted to get some of it out. Actually, probably all relates to maybe the upcoming Windows release or something. So
it is, tied to that. Yeah. I think just guessing on Build, if you, I think they kind of do this everywhere, really. I bet the keynote, and there's only one, right, this year? Just one keynote?
I believe so. Well, I don't know. Is there day 2?
I don't think there is. It doesn't matter.
No, I don't think there is because of Google I/O. But
yeah. Well, okay. Whatever the reason, however many keynotes there are, I think that their messaging there is going to focus on the future. The timing of this Windows release is such that it will occur a month or more before Build anyway. So talking about what just happened then doesn't make a ton of sense. So, last year they got in trouble for doing that, but they just didn't communicate it well. I think this year, if they frame it correctly, they can say, hey, with Windows specifically, we're working on these features. Some of them will probably be in the next version. Some of them won't. It's not hard to do. So I bet that's what we're going to see at Build, that kind of thing. Future stuff.
Future stuff, he says. Mr. Paul Threat, you got anything else for today, Paul?
Well, actually, speaking of developer topics, I've got an article about my efforts to learn JavaScript that will be coming out today, and of course, Windows Weekly. So, and then the Category 5 death storm that is now enveloping Pennsylvania. So, yeah. How about you? If the word golf comes out of your mouth, I swear to God.
I did go hit around yesterday, but unfortunately, as of right now, it is 37 degrees, freedom units outside. So that's, I don't know, about 4 Celsius, something like that.
Okay.
So no golf for the foreseeable future until the next day it gets above about 50 and sunny. That's kind of my limit. Right. I love golf, but I'm not going out there in the 40s. That's just dumb.
Yep. So.
Is Miracast still hooked? Oh, it's still working today. We got that working, but not OneDrive. That's it for today's show, folks. Make sure to check out Cloudberry Lab at cloudberrylab.com/FRD and learn how to back up your data to Azure, S3, Google Cloud, just about anybody else. And we'll catch you right back here tomorrow.